Good afternoon. It's Sunday, April 26th. I'm Laura Cornfield, and this is IBA News, broadcasting from Jerusalem. Aftershocks continued to strike Nepal today, with some registering close to 6.7 on the Richter scale. Authorities estimate the death toll in more than 2,150 this afternoon, and the number of injured has climbed into the thousands. At least 700 Israelis have been accounted for, and efforts are underway to contact others believed to be stranded in isolated areas. IBA's Margot Dudkevich has this report.
Efforts are underway in Israel and on the ground in Nepal to contact an estimated 150 Israelis believed to be stranded in isolated areas, cut off from all means of communication, and unable to contact the local Israeli embassy or their families in Israel. Their condition remains unclear. A Facebook page was set up to help locate Israelis visiting in Nepal, asking them to make contact. Fearing further aftershocks, some 700 Israelis spent the night sleeping outside, in the grounds of the Israeli embassy and the Beit Chabad compound. A group of 25 Israeli couples whose babies were recently delivered by local surrogates are also waiting for medical assistance after they were forced to flee the hospitals. One of the newborn babies reportedly requires a respirator. A small delegation from the Army's Home Front Command landed in Nepal this morning. Their mission to scout out the stricken area and assess the situation and report back to Israel so that a second delegation will prepare the necessary equipment as well as a field hospital and set out. The Harel Insurance Rescue and Search Unit also landed in the country and by early afternoon plan to start searching for stranded Israelis.
They just arrived a few hours ago and they are now doing an assessment with the ambassador and the consulate to see what cases need to be handled and to set the priorities. We have a second team that is on the way now when we arrive in the evening, and we'll do whatever we need to bring everybody safe back to Kathmandu, which at the moment is not so safe as well. I would say that according to estimations that I heard, and I think that they sound reasonable, it's supposed to be around 1,000 Israelis or so. The weather is not so good. It's quite cold in the mountains, and as far as you go up, it gets colder, and people who are above 3,000 mostly rain or snow in the night, depends which height you are.
Because of the chaotic situation and the uncertainty whether planes can land in Nepal, Shachar Zahavi, founding director of IsraAid, said a small delegation will leave Israel today, taking a field hospital, 2 psychologists and other vital equipment. Because of the situation, the delegation will fly in a small airplane and will either try to land in Nepal or neighboring India, and from there travel by train or helicopter into Nepal, he said. IsraAid is coordinating with the government and army, but plan to purchase food and medication in India or Nepal, as it's cheaper. He said they're also considering ways to set up child-friendly shelters to treat children instead of leaving them to wander around in the streets. Aside from Israel, other countries across the world announced they were dispatching search and rescue teams, as well as food and medical supplies. They include the United States, who also pledged some $1 million in humanitarian assistance, China, Pakistan, Britain and European Union countries.
Our main mission, and this mission, we've been committed to this mission because we live in earthquake country, is that we find people in collapsed buildings and we try to rescue them.
Aside from Nepal, the quake caused fatalities in neighboring countries, with some 51 people killed in India, 17 in Tibet, 2 in Bangladesh and 2 on the Nepal-China border. Margot Dudkevich, IBA News.
Israel is in close contact with Nepalese officials about what aid and assistance is most needed at this critical time. Foreign Ministry spokesman Emmanuel Nachshon also told IBA Steve Leibowitz that the safety of Israeli babies born to surrogate mothers is a top priority.
The situation in Nepal is quite complex. As far as we are concerned, there are some good news because the first Israeli plane already landed in Kathmandu a few minutes ago. This is an emergency plane with just a few persons on it, but we have a Magen David Adom plane coming up and it should be landing in a couple of hours. And later on during the night, two big planes manned by a big army delegation should be leaving Israel and landing in Kathmandu the morning after. So I think that here there is some progress. The picture is as following. We have 200 people who are still considered missing. Now, it does not mean that they are in danger. People could be missing simply because the phone networks don't work and they cannot contact their family members or any other person. But of course, this is an issue that we are looking into. Our main concern and main priority are the babies which are currently in Kathmandu, and this is certainly going to be our priority in the next days. We would like to make sure that those babies receive the best medical treatment in Kathmandu and afterwards are brought to Israel as quick as possible.
Will they be brought directly to Israel, or is there an expectation to bring the newborns to India first?
No, we think that we will be able to bring the newborns directly to Israel. We think that now with the amount of planes that we have and the medical equipment on the planes, including incubators and other life-saving equipment, will allow us to bring everybody back directly to Israel.
Is there a thought yet about what Israel will be establishing with the larger delegation? Will it be a field hospital?
Yes, we are going to build a field hospital. It's going to be done in coordination with the Nepalese authorities. We have sent our military attaché from New Delhi to Kathmandu in order to look for an appropriate location for this field hospital. Of course, we are in contact with the Nepalese because we need to understand from them what is their priority, what is it exactly that they need. But we are going to extend the full assistance to Nepal. Just the way we did it in Haiti a few years ago and in other places. We believe that it is part of our mission, and this is part also of the very good relations that we have between Nepal and Israel.
Now, there were some Israelis that were stuck on Himalaya trails that were kind of stranded and waiting for rescue. Any word about them?
Well, not yet, and this is a source of concern because actually we are talking about people who may be the victim of avalanches which were provoked by the earthquake. As far as we know, and this is the situation right now as we speak, there are no wounded Israelis or, God forbid, worse than that. But we are extremely attentive to developments, including to the situation in the Everest.
In other news, police in Jerusalem have tracked down and arrested the Arab man suspected of running down 3 police officers in the capital last night. This comes after a series of attacks, including the firebombing of a passenger bus on the highway to Jerusalem. We get more from IBA's Ari O'Sullivan.
It was a weekend of terror. In the Jerusalem neighborhood of Atur on the Mount of Olives, last night around 10 o'clock, a car driven by an Arab ran down 3 police officers. 1 policewoman was in moderate condition and 2 policemen suffered light injuries. The driver fled, but police forces were able to locate and arrest him this morning. This came following a day of rioting and stone throwing by Arab residents angered by the shooting death of a Palestinian teenager, Mohammed Abu Ghanim, who was killed when trying to attack them with a butcher knife at the Azim checkpoint Friday night near Malay Adumim. The family of the teenager rejected the police version of events and said that their son was killed in cold blood by the Israeli security forces. His body was handed over to the family for his funeral, which is expected today. Jerusalem mayor Nir Barkat came to the scene and his vehicle was attacked by an angry stone-throwing mob of youths who shattered his windshield. He was not hurt, but members of the medical rescue teams were also hit by stones. Also last night, a petrol bomb was hurled at a passenger bus traveling on the Highway 443 to the capital. The bus ignited in flames, but fortunately it was empty and the driver was able to escape. In Hebron, this dramatic footage captured an attack by a Palestinian man stabbing a border policeman guarding the Cave of the Patriarchs. Another border policeman shot and mortally wounded the attacker. The stabbed border policeman was evacuated to a hospital where he was being treated for moderate injuries. The question is whether this is all part of a chain of related events or a general igniting of tensions by Palestinians. Security officials say that there were 2 stoning incidents in the West Bank today, including the pelting of a bus on the Gush Etzion Hebron highway. No injuries were reported. Ariel Sullivan for IBA News.
3 people were injured, 2 seriously and 1 moderately, in a car bomb explosion in the Tel Aviv suburb of Givatayim. Police sources report that the blast took place on Palmach Street near a nursery school packed with toddlers and caretakers. The victims, all in their 40s, were evacuated to the Tel HaShomer and Ichilov hospitals. Officials believe the incident was criminal in nature. Turning to legal matters, in the Haifa District Court has sentenced both the suspended mayor of Upper Nazareth, Shimon Gabso, and his former top deputy, Adi Balko, who were convicted in February on fraud charges for threatening a member of the city council after the 2008 elections that if he did not resign, his wife would lose her job with the municipality. The councilman refused, and the officials made good on their threat to fire his wife, actions which the judge found amounted to bribery. Gabso got 6 months, which he will serve in community service, and was fined 20,000 shekels. Barco will do 5 months of community service and was fined 10,000 shekels. There was no moral turpitude in the conviction, which allows Gabso to return to his position as mayor. Turning to coalition talks, and with the deadline fast approaching next week, there appears to be some movement toward settling the coalition puzzle. Here with more is IBA's Elliot Walgalanter.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu looks set to have the pieces needed to cobble together a new governing coalition after Bayit Yehudi leader Naftali Bennett dropped his demand last night for the foreign ministry. He's now requesting the education portfolio, a move which likely lifts a major stumbling block in negotiations. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu told Bennett he would give him an answer in the coming days. In talks on Friday, Netanyahu reportedly offered up a number of appointments, including 3 ministers, a deputy minister, and a Knesset committee chairman. While the education ministry was not among the posts offered, Netanyahu is thought to be open to giving Netanyahu the post in lieu of a more senior position. With Bennett freeing up the foreign ministry, it will stay with Yisrael Beitenu leader Avigdor Liebman, giving Netanyahu the last pieces he is thought to need to form a government. But Yisrael Beitenu is still presenting Netanyahu with a problem due to its staunch opposition to rolling back legislation on universal national service for the Haredim and reforms of the state conversion and marriage registration systems. Canceling that legislation is a fundamental demand of Shas and United Torah Judaism. Another bone of contention is the feud between Shas and Bayit Yehudi for control of the religious services ministry. Bayit Yehudi held the office in the outgoing government, but Netanyahu's reported promise to now deliver the ministry to Aryeh Deri's Shas party has enraged Bennett. According to Israel Radio, the Likud has offered a compromise by which the religious services minister will be from Shas, while his deputy will be a Bennett appointee. If Netanyahu concedes to the Haredi parties rolling back legislation on universal national service and reforms of the state conversion and marriage registration systems, Yisrael Beitenu would then head to the opposition, leaving just 61 seats in a razor-thin government. And in that case, the foreign ministry will go to someone in Likud. Seems like there's still a ways to go. Laura?
Thank you, Ali. President Reuven Rivlin today hosted an event at the official residence marking the 100th anniversary of the mass killing of some 1.5 million Armenians at the hands of the Ottoman Turks during World War I, but refrained from using the word genocide in his remarks. Leading up to the anniversary, the Foreign Ministry applied pressure to make sure Rivlin would not deviate from the terminology used by the Israeli government to describe the events of 1915. Before becoming president, Rivlin was among the leaders of the campaign to recognize the Armenian genocide. This year, for the first time, a Knesset delegation participated in a ceremony marking its anniversary in the Armenian capital, Yerevan. At the ceremony today, attended by leaders of Israel's Armenian community, Rivlin spoke about his parents' recollection of the arrival of Armenian refugees to Jerusalem.
In 1915, when the members of the Armenian nation were being massacred, the residents of Jerusalem, my own parents, and the members of my family saw the Armenian refugees arriving in their thousands. In Jerusalem, they found shelter, and you, their descendants, continue to live here today as Jerusalemites. No one in Jerusalem denied the massacre that has taken place. As you know, this has been my personal view ever since. We are morally obligated to point out the facts as horrible as they might be, not to ignore them. The Armenian people have been the first victim of modern mass killing.
For the first time since 2007, Hamas won elections for the Student Council of Birzeit University, which is considered the most liberal of Palestinian colleges and a reliable indicator of the mood on the street in the West Bank. In what some experts are calling a political earthquake, and others merely attributing to localized issues on the campus, located near Ramallah, the Hamas-affiliated Islamic Wafa bloc won 26 of the council's 51 seats. Fatah came in second with 19 seats, followed by 5 for the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine. Hamas leader Khaled Mashal hailed the victory as the first step in ending Israeli occupation and reflected the Palestinian people's support for resistance. Another Hamas official said the election triumph proved that the Palestinian Authority's policy of excluding and suppressing Hamas in the West Bank was a failure. The Russian biker gang called the Night Wolves have set off on a 6,000-kilometer ride that would retrace the route of the Red Army on the 70th anniversary of the victory over Nazi Germany in World War II. The pro-Kremlin riders launched the ride from Moscow at the start of a trek that is planned to take them through Belarus, Poland, the Czech Republic, Slovakia, Austria, and finish in Berlin. While in Poland, they plan to visit the Auschwitz-Birkenau concentration camp, which was liberated by the Red Army. The problem is that both Germany and Poland have announced that the Russian bikers are not welcome in their countries. Mostly long-haired and heavily tattooed, the Night Wolves are pro-Stalin and pro-Putin. The Russian president has ridden with them on a number of occasions. The Polish prime minister has described the rally as a provocation. The Kremlin released a statement of support for the rally, and the bikers say they will not be deterred. And in another commemoration of World War II, the historic meeting of Soviet troops and their American allies at the Elbe River in Germany was reenacted on the 70th anniversary of the event. The day marks the moment when American troops coming from the West and Soviet Army units arriving from the East joined together on the destroyed bridge over the river a few days before the final defeat of Germany. Yesterday, hundreds of participants dressed in Army uniforms stood on each side of the river as the encounter was reenacted. Jewish Republican leaders met this weekend in Las Vegas and heard from several presidential candidates their views on a proposed nuclear deal with Iran.
If Senate Democrats continue their pattern of being protectors of the Obama administration's failed Iran policy, then in January 2017, when a new president enters the White House, there is a very real possibility that he or she will face an Iran on the verge of having nuclear weapons. And one question I would encourage each of you to think about, every American to think about, is which candidate as commander-in-chief would be willing to act decisively to ensure that under no circumstances ever does Iran acquire nuclear weapons.
The policy of isolating Israel must stop. This administration is undermining Israel's negotiating position with the Palestinians, and it must stop. A renewing of our alliance with Israel must begin.
I believe it's imperative that those of us who believe in democracy and freedom in America and for Israel stand together as never before. Israel's enemies are our enemies. Israel's cause is our cause. If the world knows nothing else, let it know this: America stands with Israel.
President Barack Obama got some belly laughs at the annual White House Correspondents' Dinner that draws leading journalists and politicians. Prime Minister Netanyahu got a mention, as did something called his bucket list. Let's have a listen.
After the midterm elections, my advisors asked me, Mr. President, do you have a bucket list? And I said, well, I have something that rhymes with bucket list. Take executive action on immigration? Bucket. New climate regulations? Bucket. It's the right thing to do. There's a shelf life to that thing. I look so old, John Boehner's already invited Netanyahu to speak at my funeral.
Mark your calendar for tomorrow night when the Blaze Bar in Jerusalem will be hosting a special benefit for Sobar, the first alcohol-free music bar for teens and young adults. On the bill, Sean Hurwitz, lead guitar for the popular Smash Mouth band, along with Daniel Brecher, who appeared with the renowned Hayudim group. The fundraiser aims at securing a permanent location for the Sobar, which founder Tracy Shipley says will become a focal point for Jerusalem youth to learn, practice, perform, and listen to music in a safe setting. Donations for tickets start at 30 shekels, with tax deductions above 100 shekels. That's a Sobar benefit at the Blaze Bar on Hillel Street tomorrow night at 9 o'clock. Taking a look at local finance, with no currency trading on Sundays, the shekel remains the same, while share prices on the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange started off the trading week mixed. Here's a look at the mid-afternoon numbers. Taking a look at the weather, and a Sharav heat wave is expected tomorrow. Here are the highs and lows for the next 24 hours at home and abroad. That's all for this newscast. Aaron Viner will be here tomorrow with more news from Israel and abroad. Until then, I'm Laura Cornfield, wishing you a great evening and shalom from Jerusalem.